When it comes to Canada's housing problem and how unaffordable it is, everyone points to supply, the fact that we need to build more homes. In this video, I'm going to tell you why that's not really the problem, why the real problem is Canada's immigration policy, and how that makes housing expensive in Canada. When people talk about Canada's real estate market and how unaffordable it is, one of the things you hear people point to as to the reason why it's unaffordable is because we don't build enough housing. So they speak to supply. They'll tell you that there's not enough housing being built to keep up with the demand. But for this video, I want to talk about the demand side. Why is the demand so much and why is supply having such a hard time keeping up with the demand? Because one of the ways that you can balance a market, in addition to building more supply, you can also reduce the demand. And Canada is in a weird predicament where demand is constantly coming in because we need that demand, and that's also contributing to why supply is never keeping up with housing. By the way, if this is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name is Brighton. I'm a financial coach and the author of the book Master Your Mortgage: What the Bank Will Not Tell You About Buying the Right Home. On this channel, I explore financial topics to try to teach you how to put your money to work rather than working for your money. If that's something that you're interested in, do me a huge favor. Make sure you hit the like button and also make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Our economic system is just really based around consumption. The idea being that if you have a lot of consumption needs, then you have a lot of incentive for other people to create things for others to consume. So whether it be clothing, services, or YouTube videos, the idea is that if there's a need for consumption, there's an incentive for other people to try to create those things for people to consume. Now, if you have a large population, that's a good thing because you have more consumption needs, which then means you have more incentive for people to create more economic activities that hopefully then benefit both the individuals that are creating stuff and also the greater society as a whole. So population really matters when it comes to a consumption-based economy because the more people you have, the more consumption you can get, and the more consumption you get, the more economic activity you can then produce, which hopefully then improves the lifestyle of all your citizens within your country. But in Canada, we have a problem. We're a big country by landmass, but we're small in terms of population relative to the rest of the world. Canada's population stood at 39 million people as of November 1st, 2022, and the bulk of that population was concentrated in 4 provinces. In BC, we had 5.3 million people. In Alberta, we had 4.5 million people. And in Ontario, we had 15.1 million people. And in Quebec, we had 8.7 million people. So if you have a consumption-based society and you don't have a big population relative to other countries, then it's really critical that you have at least a healthy birth rate to ensure that you have young people coming into the society that can actually help replace those individuals that are aging out of the system. But that's also a problem in Canada because we have a low fertility rate. We haven't hit our replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman since 1971. And that trend isn't getting any better. In 2019, the fertility rate went from 1.47 per woman to a record low of 1.40 in 2020. So we're not having enough babies in Canada to replace the existing population. And that's a concern just beyond housing affordability because you have to think people are going to be expecting pension. And if you don't have new people going into that system to cover those pension obligations, you're going to have a problem down the road. So if Canada can't meet its population needs internally, then it has to look outside. And that's where immigration is such an important thing for Canada because it's not something that we need to do. It's something that we have to do to keep the economy going. So for 2022, the Canadian government has an immigration target of just over 431,000 people that it's looking to attract to come to Canada. For 2023, that number increases to 447,000 people, and for 2024, it goes up to 451,000 people. So as you can see, the Canadian government is well aware of the need that we need to attract immigrants at a consistent pace to keep our economy going, and that's why they set those immigration targets. They also do it because they know that's the only way we get population growth. So from 2016 to 2021, our population increased by 5.2% to a total of 37 million people. But that was entirely due to immigration. It wasn't due to birth. But our immigration policy is also impacting our housing market indirectly because most of the immigrants that we bring in tend to settle in 3 provinces, which is British Columbia, Ontario, or Quebec. And these markets, British Columbia and Ontario, tend to be the markets who are suffering the most from a housing problem. So if you're bringing new people in, but new people tend to settle in places where they're having housing supply issues, then it's no surprise that the housing market continues to shoot up because the demand side is always outpacing what the supply is able to keep up with. But due to Canada's immigration needs, we can't actually slow down demand, which unintentionally creates a situation where we always have far more demand than supply can actually keep up with. So even if we were to build as many homes as we could at full capacity, our demand still far exceeds what our supply capacity actually can meet up, which creates a situation where we have far too many people chasing too few homes, which ultimately is why housing prices continues to be so expensive in Canada. But in having this immigration requirement to keep our economy going, we're also indirectly impacting our housing market. And the reason it's being impacted is because we've got a steady supply of demand coming in every year, and our current supply capacity in our housing market cannot even meet the existing demand that we have internally. So when we continue to bring in new immigrants, we essentially make it impossible for our supply to keep up with our housing market. Therefore, that results in house prices continue to increase over time because our demand side is just way too much for our supply to keep up, even at full capacity. Finally, it's so important for us to get the housing problem corrected in Canada because we're no longer just trying to attract those individuals to our country only. Other countries are suffering from the same low birth rate and aging population as we are. So countries such as the United States, China, Japan, and Europe, they're all suffering from the same issues, which means they're all trying to attract the same immigrants that we're trying to attract. So for us to make ourselves competitive, we have to make sure that the one thing that they're going to need when they arrive in Canada, which is housing, is actually affordable. If they start to hear that housing in Canada is far too expensive to have a reasonable life, they're going to pick other options. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, everyone loves Canada. That may be true, but in a post-COVID world where anyone can work from anywhere and we're trying to attract the best talents have options, which means that they don't have to come to Canada, but they choose to come to Canada, which means if we make our housing market so unaffordable, they're going to be rational human beings and they're going to pick places that can actually provide a reasonable quality of life for them at a reasonable price. They're not just going to come to Canada because it's nice. They're going to come to Canada because it's nice and it also makes sense for them financially and they can actually have the quality of life that they want in Canada. So that's why it's really important for us to get this housing issue corrected, and we have to start paying better attention to our immigration policy and how that's connected to making our housing market unaffordable. Because if we don't pay attention to it, we eventually may make ourselves uncompetitive and people may naturally just choose not to come to Canada over the next coming years because it just doesn't make sense for them to come here from a financial standpoint. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you found it insightful. If you did, do me a huge favor, make sure you hit the like button. Also make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care, guys.